The New Testament lesson for today is from the Message translation, Matthew chapter 13. There's a copy of it somewhere near you if you will pick that up and follow along. This Message translation does a great job with this parable that Jesus tells, and so that's why I'm using it today. A harvest story. About that same time, Jesus left the house and sat on the beach. In no time at all, a crowd gathered along the shoreline, forcing him to get into a boat. Using the boat as a pulpit, he addressed his congregation, telling stories. "What do you make of this? A farmer planted seed. As he scattered the seed, some of it fell on the road, and the birds ate it. Some fell in the gravel. It sprouted quickly, but didn't put down roots, so when the sun came up, it withered just as quickly. Some fell in the weeds. As it came up, it was strangled by the weeds. And some fell on good earth and produced a harvest beyond his wildest dreams." Are you listening to this? Really listening? The disciples came up and asked, "Why do you tell stories?" And he replied, "You've been given insight into God's kingdom. You know how it works. Not everybody has this gift, this insight. It hasn't been given to them. Whenever someone has a ready heart for this, the insights and understandings flow freely. But if there is no readiness, any trace of receptivity soon disappears. That's why I tell stories, to create readiness, to nudge the people towards receptive insight. In their present state, they can stare until doomsday and not see it. Listen until they're blue in the face and not get it. I don't want Isaiah's forecast repeated all over again. Your ears are open, but you don't hear a thing. Your eyes are awake, but you don't see a thing. The people are blockheads. They stick their fingers in their ears so they won't have to listen. They screw their eyes shut so they won't have to look, so they won't have to deal with me face to face and let me heal them. But you have God-blessed ears, eyes that see, and God-blessed eyes that see, and God-blessed ears that hear. A lot of people, prophets and humble believers among them, would have given anything to see what you are seeing, to hear what you are hearing, but never had the chance." Here ends the gospel. Parables are like some of the things that are advertised, some of the things you've encountered in life that we would say have hooks in them, you know. You're offered a deal, but part of the deal, there's a hook in it, and you're going to have to do something a certain way, or you're going to have to spend extra money. You know, a lot of toys are hooks nowadays. I was talking about this with some of the Sleeper family yesterday, and it dawned on me. Recently, I bought my grandson a small set of something that was a train, and it had a little house or something that the train went in. There was a little car attached to it, and the train ran around on this little track. It wasn't very big. It was like 2 pieces of paper. And I thought, wow, this is really great. So my daughter in Virginia calls me because I'd mailed it down there, and she says, "Oh, that's so wonderful. That's number 7. I said, "What?" No, I bought this at TJ Maxx, and it was on sale. It was like $25 on sale for $15, right? I'm thinking $15 is enough of a present for a 3-year-old. Besides, I've been to the house. I know how many toys the kid has, right? She says, "Oh, yeah, Nicky loves it. It's number 7. So what do you talk about, number 7? "Well, he has the first 5. That's the hook, you see, in the toys. He has the first 5, and as soon as he got number 7, we ran out and found number 6. I said, "How many numbers are there?" She said, "I don't know." I said, "Well, you're not getting any more numbers from me." I mean, what if I went out and found number 46 on sale? And now he's got 1 to 7, and she's got to fill in from 8 to 44 or 45, whatever it is. So those are hooks, you know. It happens with toys, and sometimes we don't pay attention to it. And toys and Disney World and a lot of things that we see, stuff for ourselves, there's a hook in it. And that is, I notice when I go shopping with Susan, there are a lot of hooks. Like, I got this beautiful top. Now I need something to go with it. We all do it, you know. I don't have the perfect, among my 46 pair of shoes, I don't have the perfect pair of shoes to wear with this outfit. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but you know what I'm talking about. So those are negative hooks. And also these ads that promise a near miracle. I love this aging cream, you know. Now, I mean, that's usually advertised, I think, for women. But I'm thinking to myself, works for women. My face can't be that much different. Don't say anything. I could get this aging cream and all these wrinkles, you know. And maybe if my face was tighter, I could get more hits in softball, you know. You just don't know. It's a miracle cream. Rub it on my hands, my arms. Maybe my muscles would regenerate. All that kind of stuff. So there's stuff that promises miracles, and that's another one of the hooks. There are also good hooks. There are good hooks in life. Times when we get hooked and we didn't realize it. If you've ever had a surprise party thrown for you, that's a good hook. Come on over, we'll get a pizza or something. You know, you walk in, there's 40 people there. There's surf and turf. There's all kinds of big banquet stuff on the table. And you say, oh, I got hooked. But that was a good hook. Those are the kind of hooks that are in parables. Jesus leads people down a path. And as they're following him, they understand. When he presents his story of the sower, everybody knows what he's talking about. Not like today. You know, our kids don't understand this stuff. It's not an agricultural society anymore. But when he goes down the path with them, everybody is with him. They understand everything. And then he puts the hook in there. And the hook in this thing is, do you have a ready heart? Will you understand this? He says, whenever someone has a ready heart for this, insights and understandings flow freely. Is it possible that sometimes you don't understand something, I don't understand something, because our heart isn't ready? Our heart isn't ready to understand it. It doesn't automatically happen because we have an intellect and we're able to gather our thoughts. But sometimes our heart is against it. A lot of the great stories in your life that you've read, not only Bible stories but other stories, they contain the opening of someone's heart. Someone saw the world some way, their heart was set, sometimes against some things in life that were good for them. And then the story unfolds and the heart opens and you see something that you never saw before. And that makes the story so interesting and so wonderful. Having an open heart, being receptive to something new, is a crucial part of being a human being. And you understand it, you know it, because it's happened to you. And you're waiting for it to happen again, but is your heart ready for it? You remember the first time you fell in love? Some of you I know were very young. The first time you fell in love, this is one of the tough things about being a teenager, isn't it? You get all these feelings flooding over you all of a sudden, and you're not sure where they're coming from and what's happening. But you know the direction they're coming from, that person over there. And your heart is open all of a sudden to this person. And you see everything this person does. You look at everything this person wears. You want to know what this person's opinion is. All these kinds of things, because your heart is now open. And you'll take it in. And if this person says, you know, first girl I fell in love with liked sweet tarts. You know what those candies are? Sweet tarts. I was working in a drugstore. She came in to buy sweet tarts. I thought, I got to have sweet tarts with me all the time. I had sweet tarts in the glove compartment of my car. I had a case of sweet tarts in my trunk. I hated sweet tarts. I think they're terrible candy, but I had them. And so then after she and I started dating, she said, I didn't really like sweet tarts. I liked you. Having an open heart is something we know about. And having an open heart is necessary to make changes. I think about people who are addicts, people who are alcoholics or substance abusers, or all of us have some kind of thing that we are susceptible to that catches us when we're unaware. But people who have addiction problems have to have a ready heart. They can understand the problem. They can be talked to about the problem. Other people can say, you know, you ought to do this, you ought to do that. There's all kinds of help available. But until our own heart is ready, nothing changes. Nothing changes. I had an uncle who was a terrible alcoholic. And he went to Moody Bible Institute in Chicago. Any of you know Moody Bible Institute? Moody Bible Institute is the bedrock of fundamental Christian world. And they believe the Bible is absolutely true, everything about it. And if the Bible says the hills sang and the trees clapped their hands, and by God the hills sang and the trees clapped their hands. I don't know how that works, but that's what they believe. He went there and they talked to him and they said to him, you know, you probably have the call to the ministry. But he liked to drink. And so his heart wasn't open. And when I was going into the ministry, I went up to Michigan to visit him, and he said, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with yourself now? And I said, I'm going to go into the ministry. He said, that's ridiculous. Jesus said, you must be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect, and none of us are perfect. Nobody can be a Christian. And his heart wasn't ready, was it? His heart wasn't ready. He's one of those people that God says you can stare until doomsday and you'll never see it. You can hear until your face turns blue and you'll never get it. And that's the way he was. When I worked at the school, the kids at PYC, the thing they needed to open their heart to was one of the hardest things you can ever imagine, and that is their mother or father, or both of them, whoever their parent was, could not parent them, could not love them, could not teach them, could not be the nurturing person they wanted them to be. They were still the mother biologically, or still the father. But they couldn't live with that person because that person was ruining their lives. Now, how do you open your heart to that? How do you open your heart to the fact that this person who brought you into the world, that is your mother especially, in most cases it was the mother, you can't live with her. She's not the right one. And somehow you have to open your heart to the idea that I can do this without my mother, without my father, without my grandmother, whoever it is. That's pretty tough stuff to open your heart to. That's pretty hard to do. But when those kids opened their heart to that thing, the world changed. Everything changed for them. And it was a miracle, and you can't imagine how it made people on the staff feel. I want to read to you a little piece from a commentary. It's written by Douglas Hare, who's a professor at Pittsburgh Seminary. Jesus spent no time describing the golden age on a transformed earth or the golden streets of the heavenly Jerusalem. He was less interested in the future than in the present dimension of God's rule. He spoke often of the imminent judgment, but this was in large part because of its meaning for the present. At the heart of all this activity was the conviction that in and through him, God's end-time kingdom was invading the world, confronting men and women with the necessity of decision. The kingdom parables are thus concerned primarily with God's action in the present and people's response, because the reaction to Jesus' message divides people sharply into the receptive and the unreceptive. I like that, the invasion. When Jesus comes, the invasion is here. So make a decision about whether you're part of this or not. And much of any decision that you and I make about our lives involves our hearing, truly listening, understanding stories, because we just let the words wash over us. We've talked about this before. Morton Kelsey, who's one of the authors I've read a lot of, said, Without listening, there is no love. And I don't know of a truer statement than that. And when you know people who are good listeners, you talk about that because they just hear you. They don't have advice. They're not editing your talk. They're not adding to it. They're not interrupting. They're just hearing you. And then in this parable, there are the issue of the rocks and the road and the weeds. And that's resistance to growth. Now, I know nobody in this room has any resistance to growing as a person. None of you ever resist change, is that right? When something comes in your life and you immediately want to outlaw it or push it away or keep a distance from it, you are resisting what that thing could bring to you. Even if you don't accept it eventually, it has some story to tell. I knew a pastor when I was in the Southern Baptist Church. His bookshelf was full of the same author. Every book this guy wrote, he put on the shelf, he read. And he only had a few other authors. They were all people who agreed with the author he read. We have that problem today, even in the news. You know, you can get a news channel that agrees with your position, can't you? You can get a radio person who agrees with your position, so that's the only person you listen to. And whatever that person thinks or however they think, or whatever slant they give it, you say, that's good. And then when you hear something that's completely outside that person's ideas, or the slant is totally different, click. But maybe there's something in that other side that you need to hear. And part of this growing edge that Jesus is talking about is the decision to grow. The decision to say to myself, there is a growing edge on me somewhere. I have to find out what it is. And there are parts of me that are locked in, and I have to examine those parts and see should they stay locked in or not. We used to take the kids on the Saco River trip every year up in Maine, and if you've ever done a canoe trip on a river with a little rapids, not a lot, but a little, that's a great thing, and you probably think about those things and you know something about it. These were kids from Springfield and Boston and Lawrence who had never been in a canoe. Some of them had never been in the water, except at a pool in the city. So the idea of going out into the wilderness of Maine, going out into the wilderness, going down this river in a canoe, can you think about what that would be like for you? Never paddled. I mean, they did know which end of the paddle to hold, but that's kind of self-evident. So we used to take them there, and we'd say, you're going to do this. You have to challenge yourself to do this, something completely new. And the last trip on that river that I went on, a tremendous storm came up. A tremendous storm. Lightning like you wouldn't believe. Thunder and lightning. Now, some of you are really scared of thunder and lightning when you're sitting in your own living room. Can you imagine you're out on a river in these canoes? And so we quickly got to the shore and we pulled the canoes up on the shore. And this storm hit, and here we are on this big bank. You don't sit near trees. You all know that. You squat down and try to get as low as you can on the sand. And this storm is raging, and the lightning was unbelievable. And to tell you the truth, I was a little scared myself. And these kids were shaking. Oh, it was something to see. But what was better to see and better to hear was when we got back to the school, they ran up to their friends and said, you should have been in the storm we were in. Oh, it was. And the kids would say, what are you talking about? Oh, man, we were all hunched together on the sand, and even Tim was afraid. And even Bob was afraid. And these were the other staff people. And even Jerry was afraid. We were all scared. And the lightning, and of course, you know how stories are told, the lightning hit right next to me. It hit right there. I stuck my hand out like this, I'd have had no fingers. It was right there next to me. And I just sat there because I wasn't afraid of that storm. Just hearing those stories, for me, was worth a couple of months' salary. Those girls came back changed. They were different kids. They had a sense of themselves, a sense of accomplishment, and confidence in themselves they had never had before. And so when Jesus says at the end of this parable, you have God-blessed eyes, eyes that see, and God-blessed ears, ears that hear. A lot of people, prophets and humble believers among them, would have given anything to see what you are seeing, to hear what you are hearing, but never had the chance. Do you believe that you have God-blessed eyes and God-blessed ears? It makes all the difference. Amen.